Really? Ha! How about that? You know I fixed that parking brake for a reason. Howdy folks, welcome back. This is going to be the third and probably final chapter on the Rusty Ranger. She's a 1986 Ford Ranger that I bought not running for $300. We diagnosed it with a bad coolant temperature sensor. Now it runs like a champ. We did brakes, tires, batteries, fluids, that kind of stuff, and we got it back on the road. It drives pretty good. In the meantime, I have actually purchased a donor truck that has a rust-free cab and a relatively rust-free frame. My intention was to take the two trucks, put the best parts of them together, and kind of make one pretty nice rig. I have also come to the conclusion that I'm probably never going to get that done. So I believe I'm going to sell this truck. Well, I've already verbally made a deal to sell this truck and the donor truck together as a package. The catch is we have to fix the transmission. It shifts fine, it drives fine, but it sounds a little bit like somebody put a handful of marbles in a tin can and rolled it down a flight of stairs. Except in fourth gear. And the noise has to be in the counter shaft, so we're in third gear right now. If we go to fourth gear, it's totally silent. So I think what's going on is there's a bad bearing between the input shaft and the output shaft in the transmission. And in fourth gear, it's direct drive, so those two shafts run at the same RPM, so that bearing doesn't come into a play. Anyway, we're going to drop the transmission out. It's a Mitsubishi transmission. This truck is four-wheel drive, so it has a transfer case and some other complications. We'll drop the tranny out, and we'll see if we can figure out how to fix it. How many flipping screws are in this thing? Look at that. Finally. Oh man. I don't know why. All these old Fords are like this. The hardest part of pulling the transmission is getting the stupid boot off. Okay, I think the rest of it we can do from the bottom. Well, that's not very nice. Usually there's a little notch you can pry on. Yeah, we know those aren't coming out. Let's be honest. There we go. Well, I'm pretty sure I said somewhere on video that this transmission jack is super sketchy, and I was going to order a new one post haste. Will you be shocked if I tell you that that didn't happen? So we're going to see if we can drop this transfer case. All right, now the real fun starts. We've got to get this cross member out. Ah, come on. I'm at a loss for words. I thought we'd never get that stuff out of there without torching it. I mean, there's nothing left of that bracket. All right, guys, we're ready to pull this transmission out. Normally on a V configuration engine, the engine mounts are basically in the middle of the engine, so it'll just sit there without the transmission. But I guess Ford had different ideas. The mounts are close to the front, so I've got a jack underneath the oil pan here, just holding up the back of the engine. And then we're going to drop the transmission, hopefully. Everything's loose. I think all the bell housing bolts are loose. The slave cylinder line is loose. I've got one electrical connection here we're going to have to do. Well, if you hold your mouth just right, and I mean just right, you can get her out. Well, she's a greasy little pig, that's for sure. It's got a pan on the bottom. I say we take that off first, see if we can just get an idea of what's going on. And then, well, we're gonna have to strip the whole thing down no matter what we do, so let's get to it. Well, that sucks. What size do we think that one's going to be today? It's no longer 12 millimeter. What do you think? 7/16 maybe? I gotta say, when your transmission rusts out, that's pretty bad even by my standards. Oh boy, we might have to break down and look in the book. I'm not sure how to do this. I think we've got to pull this roll pin out. Nope, I still don't know what I'm doing. Well, I was remotely close. The roll pins we need to drive out are actually, I guess, behind these plugs. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, that's about what I figured. Oh, we're probably gonna be drilling those suckers out. Hey, look at that. There's another one under here. Come on, anytime. There we go. Are these also holding it in? I bet they are. And won't fit, buddy. Why is that 1/2-inch drive? I really don't know why it was necessary for them to put a flange on that stud. I mean, once the bell housing is bolted up, you're still going to get tension in those 4 spots. Doesn't matter. There we go. Okay, we got a shim. And probably a snap ring. It's the one time you can trust Ford when they say remove and discard nut. Well, that was really stupid. Really stupid. How bad did we screw up that shaft? First rule of disassembly, folks, if it won't go, don't force it. Stupid. Didn't even see that that bearing was on top of there. I keep finding rollers. Come on, let's go. That roller bearing looks good, and that one looks good. Well, I thought we could pull that up far enough to sneak the input shaft out. Alright, there must be another secret. This thing's pretty tricky, I gotta say. I'm thinking that sleeve there is a press fit, that's a press fit, but then this thing should slide right off, so we gotta somehow get that out of there. All right, this is the setup. I took my regular 2-jaw puller, took off the links, and I made these comically long links out of some flat stock. If this works, I'll be shocked. Well, it kind of worked. Well, there we go. It's only stupid if it doesn't work. Cool. Now we can take all these flathead cap screws out, maybe. This thing is maddening. Why will it not come apart? Well, there's your answer. It's all part of that reverse idler shaft. So now, got another spacer. Can we get anything apart yet? I don't know. I'm at a loss again. How to get this thing apart. Somehow I'm supposed to remove that bearing from the input shaft. I don't know how you're supposed to do that. Well, I don't know, folks. This is ridiculous. I've never seen a transmission that was this hard to get apart. Ever. I don't get it. How are you supposed to remove that? There's no way. Can't remove the counter shaft without removing the main shaft. Can't remove the main shaft without removing the input shaft. And there's no way to get that sucker out of there. I mean, period. It's not happening. Well, I'm at a loss. I really don't know how you're supposed to do that. I think the bearing's shot anyway. Suspect we're going to have to weld something to it and pull it. Alright, folks. I did some bad things with hammers and screwdrivers. Long story short, oh man, I even broke my screwdriver. Long story short, I think we can get this input shaft out. There we go. That is ridiculous. So that's the bearing right there that I was suspicious of. It looks fine. Oh, this one's the bad one. I don't know, the manual is just so worthless. It says remove outer race and bearing, but they don't tell you how. Plus this thing flops around like a freaking dead whale. Jeez. I don't know. I'm all ears here, people, if there's a better way. I surely don't see it. Oh my God. Well, you know it's getting serious when the grid paper comes out. I'll try to explain this. It's pretty devious. Whoever designed this transmission really painted us into a corner. The problem is you can't remove the input shaft without removing the counter shaft. And you can't remove the counter shaft without moving the main shaft. And you can't move the main shaft without removing this bearing, the big ball bearing on the input shaft, or the double angular contact bearing on the output shaft. It looks like you can. Like, I would swear that you can, but you can't. The drawing's not quite right. There's actually like a ring, a larger ring on the inside of the input shaft for the synchro, and it will not slide past the gear on the counter shaft. There's a relief, but the relief isn't big enough for it to slide past. And you can remove the bearing races on the outer races on the counter shaft, and it'll move up, but it won't move up far enough. So, yeah, it's pretty tricky. Never seen anything quite like it. I guess the way it's supposed to be built it was not designed to come apart, but the way it was designed to go together is you build up all of these gears, and then you press this bearing and this bearing in from the outside. So to get it apart, you had to pull one or both of those bearings out. And there's no easy way to do that. The way I did it is I removed the snap ring on this ball bearing in the front on the input shaft, and I stuck a screwdriver down in the snap ring groove, and then I hit the end of the input shaft, and I was able to keep putting different little spacers behind my screwdriver and slowly walk that bearing off the input shaft. Anyway, that's the secret. If anybody knows how you're supposed to do that, please tell me. Is there like a tool you can buy to attach to one of these bearings to pull it out? I thought about welding something to the race, maybe. I don't know. From reading on the forums and stuff, I guess later, like in 1988 and newer, they changed the input shaft so that it would come out without removing the counter shaft. So, yeah, I guess they figured out this was a problem. But in our particular case, it makes it very difficult to get it apart. Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, there's your problem. So it's not the bearing that I thought it would be. I thought it would be this guy here, between the main shaft and the input shaft and the output shaft, which is on the main shaft. Yeah. So I'm thinking that maybe when it's in fourth gear, because the shafts are locked together, it has the pilot bearing here too, so it kind of cancels out the need for this input shaft bearing. But yeah, that's the problem, I'm sure of it. I guess we could take the cage, cut the cage open and see if we can see the inside race. Oh yeah. Yeah, she's completely smoked. See the big chunk out of the ball there. Yeah, that's not going to self-correct. Cool, I'm glad we found something. So we need an input shaft bearing. Possibly an output shaft bearing as well. I don't know if I can put that angular contact bearing back together. But yeah, that's it. That's the smoking gun. Cool. All right, folks, let's start with the good news. I think the only problem with this transmission is this input shaft bearing. So if we can get a new bearing and a couple of gaskets, I think we can put this thing back together and have a pretty good outcome. The bad news is it has been a massive investment of time to get to this point. It took me about 2 hours to remove the transmission and over 3 hours to disassemble it to this point. This thing is crazy complicated the way that it's assembled. I think we did a transmission not too long ago on a Ford. It was a top loader, Eaton. I had the thing apart in about 20 minutes. This is a totally different ball game. Anyway, I'll bring you guys back when I find out about the parts, and we'll see if we can get this thing put back together.